Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Slingers.
Yo,
Got special guest here today, Julius Freeman.
thanks for having me. Appreciate it. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited. It's the one thing that I've been noticing that's lacking in live streaming is not enough love for writers, and I like that you have a show dedicated to writing, and there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, it's obviously the art stuff is great too, but every once in a while, I would like to have some streams where you talk about writing. So I think Narwhal does that, which I like. So he doesn't do it as often now because I think he's busy with his project. But before he launched his newest project, he would do these streams where he would break down like his writing process, which I dug. So I'm happy that you're doing that. It's great stuff.
Yeah, definitely. It's easy to sit there and draw and not kill time that way, but it's a little more difficult, especially for me, who's less of a writer, more of an artist, to sit down and talk. But I'm trying to do more of that.
That's awesome. I'm glad. Yeah, I'm happy you do it.
Also, thanks for coming again.
Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it. I appreciate you reaching out and wanting to talk writing and comics and all sorts of cool stuff.
Definitely. So tell us about yourself.
Well, I've been trying to. My name's Julius Freeman, by the way, for those who don't know, and I am the writer of Vigilant Fury that's currently on Indiegogo, and I also wrote and created The Ghetto Dragon, which was the Indiegogo project I did about 2 years ago, which did relatively well for my first time of crowdfunding, which was awesome. And I've been trying to, like everyone else in this thing, trying to break into comics since I was in my 20s, and I've been working to break through. And then finally, when the crowdfunding thing came about, it was a unique opportunity to finally showcase what I have in terms of my writing skills, and it's a great time to be an indie creator right now.
It really is. Yeah. Crowdfunding makes it possible. It just evens the playing field for everybody.
It does. It really does. But it is hard work. It isn't easy.
It is.
Because the one thing that I guess I don't want to say it's the downside to it, but the toughest part, at least for me, was the changing of hats. So I went from just being the writer. Now I have to put on the promoter's hat, the marketer's hat, and actually have that business mindset that I rejected for so long. Growing up, you're like, I don't want to do that crap. You don't want to sell your product, and you dismiss it, and because I worked in sales for a few years, and after about the 5th year, I was like, this isn't for me. I hate this. But now that I'm selling my own product, it's like, oh, now I see the upside to having those skills,
Yeah, but it's got to be easier selling your own product because you're passionate about it,
Right.
So that's more genuine, I guess.
Yeah, it's more genuine, but the obstacle is readers are conditioned to kind of view, like, if you're not a name, they really don't care who you are. You know what I mean? Yeah. You got to prove yourself first before they start to look your way and go, hey, you know what? This writer or this artist is pretty good. He's consistent, and I'm gonna start supporting this person. So yeah, that it's a uphill battle for sure, but it's a learning process, and I'm always about learning new stuff. So this is a great journey so far.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun.
It is truly.
How did you get into writing? What pulled you into it?
It was in college, actually. My first year of college, I was about, I think 18. I was 18, and I hated writing and I hated reading, believe it or not.
Yeah.
I couldn't stop. I was all about video games. I was all about, movies. That was all me at that point. And, I forgot what class it was, but we had to read a novel and we had to write a paper on it. And the novel that they had us choose our own novel, and I was looking through, seeing what I can pick out, and I chose White Fang by Jack London. And I was like, okay, I'll just read this and write the paper, whatever, an EDA, whatever the case, right? And then when I started reading the novel, and I found out that he had written it through the eyes of a wolf that was tamed, so I was like, oh, fascinating. wow, it was like the first time I realized, like, oh, so this is this is why novels are so, like, revered, and why people love to read, is because this is something you can't do in movies, or in TV shows, where the book, I don't know, have you read that book?
No, I never have. Bang? Seen the movie, but
okay. I can see, me too. So I thought I was going to cheat my way through, to that paper, but in reality, no way. But when I started reading the novel, and I realized he just wrote it completely from the eyes of the wolf, and experiencing the wolf's journey from the wild to being tamed, because in the end he ends up being tamed as a domestic pet. I was just like blown away, and I was like, wow, this is great. And then that's when it hit me. I was like, I have to do this, because I was always an imaginative kid growing up. I read comics, I've been reading comics since I was 12, but that was the first time where I actually I want to write. I actually want to write, write down my ideas, the stories I have in my head. And if this guy from the 30s, was able to write a whole novel about a wolf from cub to an adult wolf to a domesticated pet, I was like, then I could definitely do the same thing. So that's what prompted me to be a writer, was White Fang, Jack London's White Fang.
That's awesome, man. So let me ask you this, since it was a book that got you into writing, what in your head said, I'm going to write comic books, or did you start off writing novels?
No, I decided to pursue the comic books.
Okay.
After I read the novel, it was just more of I didn't really know how exactly writing comics was about at that point just yet. I thought it was just the artist did everything. That's what I thought, and the writer was there to just add the dialogue and the narration. So that's what I thought. At that time, I thought, oh yeah, the artist comes up with the story, they hire the writer to help them write the dialogue and the narration, and that's how you make comics. But then, of course, I found out as I looked into it that no, that's not the case. It's actually the other way around. It's the writer who writes the script and then hands it over to the artist, and then they interpret what they get from the script. But of course, it all depends. I know Rob Liefeld was one artist in particular who did that very thing, which is he wrote the story, but he hired a writer to help him, write the narration and dialogue and what have you. So once I decided, okay, I want to be a writer, then I would write these ideas, these short fictional stories, and then I would try to adapt them to comics and try to find artists to help me, adapt it to a comic book form. And that's it, man. That was the journey essentially that started me to try to produce comic books and try to get my name out there, and produce work. But again, I would fail constantly throughout those years.
So we all do, right? The beginning.
Yeah. How about yourself? I'm curious. How about yourself? How did you get into comics? What prompted you to write and draw comics?
I got into comics probably when I was around 12 or so.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, and so I remember reading this article in Wizard magazine. They were interviewing Rob Liefeld, actually, and he was talking about kind of the plight of the artist. That's
right
back when Image was just forming, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. But no, like reading Amazing Spider-Man, I was a huge fan of David Michelini, who's not like a really known name. He's not like really popular.
He's great though.
But yeah, to me, like he wrote the quintessential like comic book back in the 90s. Like Round Robin's Psychic's Revenge is like one of the first miniseries that I collected.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And I absolutely love comics. To me, that's always been the bar, like all these crossovers, all these really cool characters fighting against, the Secret Empire.
Yeah. That's what made comics unique for me too, was the fact that there were no limits. There were no limits to what you drew on the page, what you produced in the page, and you had no constraints. Because in the film, for instance, like in a Hollywood film, you have constraints. You have actors, you have directors, you have producers, you have a budget. You can't go over the budget, that kind of deal. But in comics, all you need is a skilled artist who's ready and willing to put into work. And you could freaking make magic, man. Like it's amazing too. That's why comics was my chosen profession, or medium, I should say, because of how much what you can do with that medium. And it's one of those things where when I was growing up, anyway, it was still kind of a stigma to read comics. Now it's like the cool thing, Now it's all about comics, But back in in my day, it was like, you read comics? Oh, aren't those for kids, man? Like,
exactly.
what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
That deal. So I came from that generation, that final last nerd generation, where if you read comics, you were kind of like, you all right, bud? Like, are you okay? So it was cool to still be part of that world where, again, there was no limit at all. You found image books that were like, what is this? Like, this is crazy. Like the Pit was one of my favorites. The Max was another one that was like, whoa, what is this? This is amazing. This Pit monster. What is this? Not Pit monster, Max. What is this Max monster?
Right.
And the world that what's the artist's name? Keith
David? No,
it wasn't Keith David. That's the actor, I think.
That's right. Yeah, you're right. What is his name?
Oh gosh, I can't remember his name. Oh goodness. Well, anyways, I just loved how, like I said, there's no limit to your imagination when you're making comics. You just go for it. You go for it, and if you do a good enough job presenting your story or presenting your character that you created, then the readers will always flock your way, because I always feel like comic book readers were a special bunch of readers. Not so much special like, unique, but they were always open to take in something new, something fresh, not in the norm, I guess. And that's why I loved reading comics growing up, because it was out of the norm. It was something you don't see in movies or TVs or TV shows often. It was just something that was unique, always unique. Not so much now, but I'm talking about the mainstream, but in the indie comic book scene, you see that energy flourishing all throughout the indie comic book scene, where people are just our fellow artists are just coming up with these crazy cool ideas, where it's like, this is what comic books should be right here. Something that will make it difficult to adapt into a movie or a TV show.
Right.
That's what I'm always looking for in the indie comic book scene.
Yeah, just something fantastic.
Something fantastic, exactly.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. So, your very first comic book that you wrote, what was it?
Oh gosh. Very first comic book that I tried to write. I should say that. I should preface that. It was a book called The Day of the Eclipse. And it was this well, now that I think about it, maybe I could bring that back. Like try to develop it now. But it was in a nutshell, it was a story about this obviously a superhero like Superman, who was, it's weird because it was kind of like the precursor to The Boys in a lot of ways, but not as depraved or decadent like The Boys.
Right.
But the Superman like archetype character that I created, his name was Eclipse, and he got his power from both the moon and the sun. So he got his power from the sunlight and the moonlight. So he was powerful 24/7.
Right.
And on the surface, he was this beacon of hope. Everyone loved him. He was worshipped. He was loved because he saved people. But the other side of him was he was a secret military assassin for the government. And he would do these secret operations for the government at nighttime. And he, in the story, he was getting more and more powerful and more arrogant, kind of realizing, hey, why am I doing these jobs for these? I could just kill these people and just rule the planet. What am I doing?
Yeah.
And at the same time, this young kid he's having nightmares of this monster chasing him. And the story was essentially, in a nutshell, what happened was the Eclipse character ends up deciding to take over the world. I'm just to take on all the governments, and I'm just gonna run through them. But at the same time, with this young kid who was having these nightmares of this monster chasing him, it was a prophecy of the great equalizer, which was, in other words, like the universe knew that this being Eclipse was gonna eventually do this, and this monster was calling this young man to be his vessel to use he could be activated in the earth and fight against Eclipse. And the whole story was going to be about this massive epic showdown, essentially, of them two fighting throughout the whole world. So it was going to be like a worldwide fight where they would just punch each other, the whole spiel. And I wrote about 30 pages of it. There was about 5 pages drawn, and then it fell apart. It fell apart because the artist, when you're young, you don't know how I guess the ins and outs of producing comics are yet,
right?
Because I didn't have anyone under my under, like, no one took me under their wing to like, hey, let me show you how it's really done. It was more like I had to learn on my own. So I just kind of went in blind, and I realized real fast that you don't ask an artist to draw for free, which is what I did. Which is the mistake I did. And then B, you don't ask your friends to draw your comic because they don't feel obligated to finish up, that kind of deal.
Yeah.
And then C, you don't write your epic story until you get to a point where you could do it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So what my mistake was, I wanted to start off at the end as opposed to at the beginning, which was do a one shot 24-page book first, and then work your way up to your epic. And so that was the first one. That was my first attempt writing a comic book. Now in hindsight, it was actually pretty good. Now that I think about it.
It is. It's a good concept. I like that.
Yeah. And but now, now that we have the boys, that superhero trope of like wanting to take over the world has already been done to death. So it's kind of like, well, I have to figure something out to kind of make it unique again.
Yeah, I could see it as a superhero like horror combination. Taking the two.
That was the intention. At the time, I had just read V for Vendetta when I developed the story. I was really heavily into Alan Moore at that time. So of course, when that happens, you want to deconstruct. You want to deconstruct the archetypes, right? You want to emulate what you liked, and that was my, I guess, emulation of Alan Moore's approach to writing comics. But I've learned to, of course, grow out of that and realize that what, comics could be that, but at the same time they also could be fun if you just approach it a different way. But yeah, that was my first attempt. What about you? What was your first attempt at writing or making comic books?
Oh man, well, I wasn't the writer. I was the artist, and this friend of mine wrote this Batman type character.
Okay.
And I drew probably like half the book, and I think we both lost interest in it. We're both like,
yeah.
This took a lot longer. Like I think I drew the first issue.
Okay.
He had like 2 or 3 issues planned, and I only drew the first issue, and after that, like nothing happened with it.
Yeah.
But it was a learning experience.
Of course.
My first time drawing panels, and it was fun while it lasted.
How was that, by the way, when you first started drawing panels? Like, was that tough for you? Was it easy? Was it fun? Was it like,
It was a lot more work than I thought it was going to be.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Because I'm like used to drawing just like single images. When you're first starting off, that's what you do as an artist. You just draw like splash pages, kind of exciting scenes. But like to sit there and meticulously draw like a background and books on a shelf, like the character was going into a grocery store and had to draw like the snacks in the background. I'm like, that sucks.
That was the same problem I had, but obviously with the writing aspect of it.
Right.
So of course, like everyone who starts out writing comic book scripts, you don't think about stills, you think movement, you think motion. And so my panel descriptions would be these long panel descriptions where a bunch of stuff's happening, but it's like the artist, were like, wait, you want me to do what now with this panel? Like, that's impossible, man. Like that, I can't do that. You gotta split it up. And of course, it's again, like you said, it's a learning experience where you start to learn, okay, you gotta write it a certain way. And that's crazy. That's funny that you experienced the same thing. I think most artists, I would imagine, kind of go through that same deal. Right. Like learn the growing pains of an artist, especially a comic book artist. Where you start to learn and you think it's good, you think it's great, and then when someone says, "Hey, you need to work on it," you're like, "No, F you, man. This is great. You just don't understand my genius."
Yeah, that's my style, man. Leave me alone.
That's my style, man. Don't talk smack on my style.
Yeah, that's the one everybody hides behind. That's just my style.
That's cool.
Fun stuff.
Absolutely.
So, how did you make the transition from writing superhero stuff to Vigilant Fury, which is just like an action comic book, right? I mean, there's no superhero aspect to it.
There's no superhero aspect to it, even though I would love to write a superhero story, and I do have some ideas that I want to write. I think mainly it's I kind of approached it like I guess like almost like an indie creator, like an indie film creator, filmmaker, I should say. Because in filmmaking, because I studied film for a few years in college, because that was my original intention, was to become a film director, and comics were like you know, at that point, not really it was something that it'd be fun to do, and if I got published, cool, you know, awesome, but it wasn't my like, it was like number 2, and number 1 was I wanted to be a filmmaker. And one class, my instructor in one class told the classroom that the best approach for filmmaking is you got to start at the bottom and then work your way up. Again, like I mentioned earlier, you got to work your way up to your epic. And so that's why I decided to do Vigilant Fury and also Ghetto Dragon, because Ghetto Dragon is also a very grounded story. There is no supernatural element. There's no superhero element to it. And it's mainly because I was really into Ed Brubaker at the time, and I liked his work. I like his crime noir comic book stories. They're fantastic, well written, and I highly recommend, if you guys are looking for some cool, great, gritty crime noir comics, Ed Brubaker is the guy you need to pick up, because he's fan. Him and Sean Phillips are producing some fine, great works at the moment. And so that's the approach I had, was like, okay, I'll work my way up to the superhero genre, which is what I want to do. Essentially, I want to write superhero comics. And but I feel that perhaps right now, I think in order for readers to really get to know the Julius Freeman brand, I want to showcase just how I guess what's the word I'm looking for? I want to show them my skill set as a writer. Like, I could write the grounded crime noir stuff, and hopefully that'll get readers invested and interested, and like, oh, this is pretty good, you know. And then when I get the opportunity to write a superhero comic book, then hopefully that'll be enough to get readers their confidence to continue on supporting me and backing my future campaigns. And also, it felt right at the moment too, you know, because I'm the type of writer who, like, if it feels right, this is what I have to produce, you know. So for instance, like the Ghetto Dragon, for example, was something that just felt right. Like, I have to produce this right now because it's at the forefront of my mind. It's like taking up my mind space. I'm constantly thinking about it, and so I got to produce it, get it out, get it out, because my mind is just like, this is the story, man. This is the story you should work on right now. And so after that campaign closed out, I realized, especially in the crowdfunding platform, or the crowdfunding age, as I like to call it, backers are very picky as to what they decide to back on. You know, and a lot of backers prefer to back books that are closer to delivery. So like, if they see, oh, this is going to be delivered in 6 months, oh yeah, I can wait 6 months, you know, they back it. But if a book is about a year and a half away, then they kind of like, oh, I don't really want to wait a year and a half, you know. And so I thought, okay, the next project I should do is something similar to Ghetto Dragon, you know, that's kind of grounded, and something that could be close to delivery. So I decided, okay, a one shot. I said the next project has to be a one shot. It can't be, book 1, and then once you get book 1, then you have to wait for book 2, like the Ghetto Dragon, because that's what I did with that project. So for this one, I was like, okay, it has to be a one shot, and it has to be impactful. It has to like really like strike you, you know, as a reader when you read it. And so I was thinking and brainstorming, and I thought about doing a superhero comic. I was like, maybe I could do my Superman archetype, you know, comic book that I have in mind, because that's my dream, by the way. It's to one day write Superman, because that's my favorite comic book character, you know, of all time. Like, if people always say Batman, and it's great, Batman is great, but for me, it's Superman. And So I was like, well, I think at this point DC probably won't hire me because of the idea I have of for Superman. So I said, I'll just create a Superman archetype and just write that story around that archetype. But then I thought about, well, no, it has to be a certain kind of artist, and the kind of artists I want are, their page rate is a bit out of my reach for my budget. So I was like, okay, I gotta stay grounded again. I gotta keep it low so I won't go over budget. And so then I had this idea for a screenplay actually, and it was called Vigilance. And the same concept, but it was a male lead, and he lived in LA, and he's a UFC prospect. So he's trying to make it to the UFC, but he's kind of missing the killer instinct to be a cage fighter. He has the heart, but he just doesn't have that killer instinct. And the whole story is kind of, he ends up helping this girl who is a victim of the modern day slave trade, and he is kind of put into this situation where he has to protect her and all that. So as I was like, oh, I'll just adapt that to a comic book. That'd be a great comic book, And so I was developing it, and then eventually it got to a point where I was almost done. And then I told my wife, because my wife, I use her as my gauge. If I picture something of what I'm working on, and depending on her reaction, that's when I'll know, like, okay, it sucks. Like I'm not gonna do that, or I'm gonna change it.
Yeah.
And so I would picture, I would tell her what I was working on, and she'd be like, oh, that's cool. And then she's one day just blurted out like, why don't you make it into a girl, a woman? And I was like, a woman? Huh? It's like, but I've never written a girl before, like a woman. Like I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I could pull it off. And she's like, well, I can help you with that, but I think it'd be a lot more interesting if it was a woman find her way out to the situation. And I was like, interesting. And so I had to start all over again. And then eventually it changed dramatically. Like just the whole thing changed. And I ended up with Vigilant Fury down, in the end of it. And I think I've written some of my best work here.
Awesome.
Yeah, some of my best work. And with Ghetto Dragon, I was still a little iffy. I was still a little insecure because, again, I didn't know if readers were going to connect with it or enjoy it. But once I started getting some feedback from the backers who backed the book and told me they enjoyed it, they really are eager to find out what's going to happen next, because I left it in the cliffhanger at the end of book 1. And then I was like, that boosted my confidence up. Like, okay, then I have some skills. I have something here. Yeah. And so when I was developing Vigilant Fury and I had written out the entire script, that's when I really, like, by the end of it, I really felt like, okay, this is something solid. And what's that writer's name who wrote Fahrenheit 451? What was that? It's a famous sci-fi writer.
Orson Welles?
No, not Orson Welles. Oh gosh, why can't I remember his name now? He's a very famous sci-fi writer. Oh gosh, and hold on, let me look him up real quick.
All right.
I know it's gonna come back to me, and it's gonna be so obvious. Ray Bradbury.
Bradbury, okay.
Yeah, Ray Bradbury. I bought his book called The Zen of Writing, and the one chapter he did say was, of course, the advice he was given in that first chapter of that book was, obviously just write, don't stop, just keep writing, and eventually the more hours you put into it, the better you'll get.
Right.
And he did say one thing that became true for me, which was he said the first time I ever wrote a story from beginning to end, by the end of it, I had tears in my eyes because I knew it was a good story. Wow. And that's how I felt with Vigilant Fury. Wow. By the end of it, I had tears in my eyes. Like, I was like, oh, this is what he's talking about. This is because, I truly feel like I wrote a great story here, a solid story that I think readers will definitely connect with and really enjoy at the same time. So, that's how I ended up with Vigilant Fury.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, that's the epic story of Vigilant Fury production.
Gingerton says, "Ahoy, nerds! What's going on, Ginge?
Hey, Gingerton, what's up, nerd?
Hello, fellow nerds. Yeah,
glad to be here. Glad you're here with us to nerd out about writing and comics.
That's right. No, so that's awesome, man. What's the difference in your mind between writing a superhero book and an action book?
I don't think there's any difference personally. I think the only difference, obviously, is the genre. Is you're dealing with superpowered beings who are not easy to kill, as opposed to dealing with the protagonist who's easy to kill.
Right.
You know, one wrong move and she's done. And that's another thing that made the story a challenge for me, because my wife, you know, bless her, when I would show her my drafts of the change, she always told me like, nope, you can't have that because you know, a woman her size, the moment a man like gets one good hit on her, she's done. So it's like, oh, okay. So because, you know, I was writing it like a man, you know, a man fighting another man, right? So she was like, no, you gotta approach it like, you know, like if she has to try to make her analogy was a great one. She's like, you have to approach it like someone who's trying to like in Mortal Kombat, the game Mortal Kombat, you want to get perfect, right? Flawless victory. Yeah, where you never get hit, because the moment she gets hit, she's done. It's over. So I was like, oh, okay, all right, cool. That made the story more interesting for me to keep on writing and try to figure out ways for her to outsmart her captors. And so for a superhero and an action story, I feel it's the same, but obviously there's a lot of more different things you have to work around with. So in the superhero comic, I guess you could do the same. It just depends on the levels of which character. So for instance, like an example would be like DC Comics, right? You pit Superman with, let's just say, Atom Man, right? Is that his name, Atom Man? No, that's not his name. The Atom,
yeah.
The Atom, right?
Yeah.
Not the Atom. What's the other one? The soldier one. The soldier Atom powered dude. I can never remember his name. Well, anyway, Superman against that's a bad example. Superman against
like Shazam or something.
No, because they're kind of equal in my book.
Okay,
they're kind of like the same. I would say Superman against So what do you say? Your wife's totally spot on there. I'm writing some girl characters at the moment. I feel too necessary. Yeah, there you go, Ginge. Yeah.
Captain Adam.
Captain Adam. Thank you, Captain Adam. Thank you, Ginge. Thank you, fellow nerd.
Yes. Who's the nerd one now? You're the one who knew
that. Captain Adam. So Superman against Captain Adam. That would be a great fight, but we all know who's the more powerful character.
Right.
So you could probably do that the same thing here with DC with the superhero comic, as opposed, you know, with the regular action comic. It's just a matter of how you write it and how you approach it, in my opinion. So
gotcha.
It's the same. It's just a matter of how you write it and how you present it.
Yeah, it sounds almost like the stakes are raised though with just action, because your hero isn't superpowered.
Right.
Like you said, there's a wrong move, a misstep, like that's it for them.
Yeah, that's it for them, exactly. And I think readers, because I'm a reader myself, so I like, you know, who doesn't like a good underdog story, right? The underdog story is a trope that never gets old. Most readers and most people like those kind of stories because, you know, we're all in some form or fashion underdogs. You know, you are an underdog. You and myself are underdogs compared to, say, like the Ethan Van Skyers of the world or the John Malins of the world, who are up there already. They're on top of that mountain. They're riding high, and rightfully so. They earned it. They've earned their spot. But people like you and now, we have to work uphill and like climb that steep mountain and prove to the readers whose eyes are gazed at those, you know, people on top of the mountain, because like I said, they've earned it. They've earned their stripes. They proved that they know what they're doing when they produce comic books. So it's up to you and I, the people at our level, to, hey guys, hey,
look at me.
We're pretty good too. Like, come over here and check us out. So I think that's the key, is just you gotta approach it always to gain the attention of the reader. And I feel like an underdog story would be the best approach for me to write. And again, I always like writing underdog stories. It's one of my favorite tropes to write. But down the line, I would love to write a superhero comic, because that's the whole point, right? That's the reason why we got into comics in the first place, was the superhero genre. Yep. And I don't want it to go away, like some people are claiming that it is. Like it's kind of a dying genre, like the Western genre. And it's like, no, dude, no. There's so much we can do with this. Still, so much more. And it's just the reason why it feels like it's dying. It's because currently the people in charge, or not in charge, but writing those stories are not really. You could tell they don't love the genre. They're kind of just, it's almost like it's here because that's what they're selling. So I'm just gonna go with it because, I got no other choice. That's what it feels like to me when I read them nowadays. Where back in the day, you had your Mark Wades, you had your Kurt Busicks, you had your Peter Davids, who you could tell like these guys were all about it,
Yeah.
And Westerns are. You're right, Ginge.
Yes, they are. Jake.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right, because if you have, for me, it's all about authenticity and your genuine love for something. So if you have a genuine love for, like, say for instance, a Western genre, and you pour your heart out to those pages, readers will always connect with it.
Yeah,
they can see it on the page. Like Six Gun Gorilla, for instance. I mean, that's a Western genre. It's a supernatural, superhero Western genre, but it worked. People backed the campaign because it was a cool concept, and the artist involved did a great job producing that. Dude, you're the were you the same? Huh. Were you the same person who someone recommended me Pulp? Was that you on Twitter? I'm not sure. I think it was you. But yeah, let's see. Brubaker, Western Noir book. Yeah, it's like I said, I saw that and I was like, yeah, definitely I'm gonna check that out. Because I'm always a big Brubaker fan. Like he's up there on my list as one of the best writers in comics right now.
Yeah, I agree. His run on Daredevil and Captain America back in the day.
Dude,
some of the best
amazing
stuff.
Yeah, amazing stuff. And that's what made Marvel Comics great, was they allowed these writers to have fun with their characters. Yeah. And I'll always respect Brubaker because he brought us one of the best characters, Winter Soldier, man. Like he brought that to light. And and I remember I went to a con, and I went to one of his panels. He had a panel where he spoke about his writing career and what have you. And it was great because he was talking about, he shared the story about how he had the idea to bring back Bucky. And the only person who hated the idea and tried to stop him was Mark Waid. Really? People, yeah. He talked about how Mark Waid, like, you shouldn't do that. You should stay dead because that's what made Bucky, unique, was the fact that he's the only comic book character to not come back to life, And then I guess when Brubaker told Mark Waid, well, here's my idea, and he pitched it to him. Yeah. And I guess that was the part when Mark Waid was like, well, okay, that does kind of make sense. And yeah, it does work actually. And so I was like, all right, that's cool, and it worked. And it worked. Yeah, now Winter Soldier is like one of the best characters we have in the modern day, Marvel comics. So again, always gonna love Brubaker's work.
Yes. Yeah, Winter Soldier is one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, he's great looking. Yeah. The backstory is awesome. It makes sense. Yeah, of course the Soviet Russians would take his body and make him into their own super soldier killing machine. That's like perfect.
Yeah,
and it didn't insult Kirby's legacy either. Mm-mm. They just he just built on top of what Kirby and Simon laid out in their first original Captain America run. So it was perfect. I thought it was pitch perfect.
Yes, it was. All right, do you want to pitch us Vigilant Fury?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's do it. So Vigilant Fury is a story. It's a story about Angela Peretz, who goes on vacation in Florida, and she rents I don't want to say Airbnb, but Sky B&B, because I don't want to copyright issues or what have you. and she's there on vacation with her friends, and she is the victim of a highly organized human trafficking syndicate operation that involves the owner of the Sky B&B home as well. And so she's taken, and she finds herself inside a container on a container ship that's heading straight to the Atlantic. And when she gets away from her, when she's tied up and she gets free, she ends up killing the first two men who entered the container. Big shout out to Florida, my home state. No disrespect to Florida, okay? Crime doesn't sleep. Crime is everywhere. So it's not that's not a knock on Florida. So I hope those who live in Florida don't take offense to it. And so she finds herself in the container alongside other victims. And so when she kills the first two men, that's when she starts to decide, okay, I need to figure out a way how to get out of here, and understands that she has little to no choice but to defend herself. So she's violently taken, and she understands the only way to fight back against the violence that was done against her is to fight it with force. And so she comes up with a plan to escape her captivity, not just herself, but the other victims that are in the container with her. And she gains some intel when the third person goes to check on the first two who ended up there, and they didn't come back. So he goes and checks out what happened. And that's when she captures that guy and interrogates him and finds out exactly what's going on. And this individual tells her, you're essentially like, you messed up. The moment they get you, they're gonna have their fun and they're gonna toss you overboard, and that'll be the end of you. And that's when she realizes, okay, then I'm dealing with some cold-hearted individuals, and I need to like figure out a way to get through them, to get to the radio tower, to let the Coast Guard know that, hey, I've been kidnapped and we're inside this container ship. And that's the story in a nutshell. Is awesome, her plan to escape and fight through a bunch of mercenaries disguising themselves as what do you call them, crew members of this container ship, because it's not the entire crew who's corrupted. It's just a small tiny group amongst the crew. So she has to figure out who she can trust and who she can't trust.
Right.
And that's what makes the story a lot really compelling and suspenseful.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said, I wrote some of my best work here. So I think you guys are going to be very excited when you guys pick up this story, because it's a great story, and also drawn by Anthony Gambino.
Yeah.
He has when I was developing the story in my head, you mentioned David what's his name, Macciolini?
Yeah.
You mentioned him.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking Frank Miller. I was thinking Sin City. Yeah. I was thinking hard blacks, hard inks with whites. That's what I was imagining. A little bit of crime, like Eduardo Rizzo from 100 Bullets. Right. I was kind of picturing that when I was developing the story. And it was it's a weird story, man, like in a lot of ways, but cool at the same time. So I sent out a tweet saying that, hey, I'm looking for an artist, send your samples, and I got a bunch of samples, and some were good, but some were kind of like, it's not what I'm looking for, great stuff, but it's not the style I need for this story. And it got to the point where it looked like maybe I had to go elsewhere to look for an artist. So I was like, maybe I had to go to the forums that are online available, people offer their services. And then out of the blue, I got this DM from Anthony Gambino and told me, hey, here's some samples of my work, check me out, and let me know if you're interested. So I checked out his stuff, and at first glance I was kind of like, I don't know, it's almost there, but I don't know yet. And then as I started looking more closely at his work and actually really paying attention to his attention to detail, I started to see like, oh yeah, this is the guy, this is the artist I'm looking for. And what really sold me were his sequentials, he had a really good flow of his sequentials. I loved his facial expressions that he drew on the characters, and his black and white inks were spot on. Like, this is like, oh wow, I'm getting the Frank Miller vibes here. I'm getting the Gar Rizzo vibes here. And then as I DM'd him back and we were discussing, the I guess the deal, I come to find out Frank Miller was a big influence on him. Yeah. Gar Rizzo was also a huge influence on him. So it was like, perfect. That's what I'm looking for. And so once we agreed to the terms and conditions of our collaboration, I pitched him the story, and he loved it. And that's another rule too, guys. Another golden rule of a comic book collaboration, whether you're a writer or an artist, is you have to love the story. If you're a writer and you're looking for an artist and you pitch him your story and they're kind of whatever about it, but they're looking forward to getting paid for their work, which is, again, nothing wrong with that. But if you want your project to be at a top quality level, both parties or anyone involved in the creation of this project, whether you're an inker, a colorist, a letterer, a writer, or an artist, you really have to believe in the story. Right. Because if you believe in the story and you really are excited about the story when you read it, then it's going to show on the page. Right. It's going to show on the page, and the reader will pick up on it. Mm-hmm. And that's what you want. You want that. Because if you don't have that, then your project will kind of suffer. If you're just kind of half-assing it and you're like, whatever, I just want to get this done. The story is boring or it's not as good, or, whatever the case may be. Right. And so it was great to see that Anthony Gambino was excited to draw this story because it was right up his alley. And that's the same thing with the Ghetto Dragon artist. His name is Alan Fletcher. The same thing. I pitched him Ghetto Dragon. He was like, dude, I love Bruce Lee movies. I love Bruce Lee. This is perfect. This is right up my alley. Let's do this. Let's go for it. And he showed on the page. And so he agreed to it. I pitched him the entire story. He said, let's go for it. I love it. And and that's it. Here we are. And I've written the entire script. The script is done. Gambino colored my first comic book. Hey, dude, nice. Yeah. Nice, Ginge. See, a small world, man. Yep. Small world, dude.
Yeah, Ginge did, I think it's called Spells and Superheroes.
Okay.
Yeah, and Gambino was the colorist on that.
Oh, nice, dude. Nice. Yeah. Great pick. Because Gambino is a talented dude, very humble, very down to earth, very easy, very cool dude. And I'm lucky that I got a chance to work with him. And the way he found my tweet was I think it was Geronimo Draws. Mm-hmm. Was the one who saw my tweet, and he's like, "Hey, check this out." He forwarded him my tweet, and that's when he reached out to me. So shout out to Geronimo Draws for doing that. So that's how we came about to working together, and ever since then it's been a great experience working with Gambino, because he has a very good understanding of what comics are supposed to be. Right. He has a great eye for drawing sequentials, and he's very easy to work with when it comes down to the editing process. Because I write the script, and he sends me the thumbnails, and then we discuss what works and what doesn't work, and then we make sure everything is nice and flowing, and very, like I said, very humble. He leaves his ego at the door, and that's another important factor too, guys, is that you want to leave your ego at the door and not be so thin-skinned. Because I'm a believer of two minds are better than one. So when you do have two artists working with the same mindset, then you could get a fantastic book. So it's been a blessing working with Gambino for sure.
Yeah, Gambino's a good guy.
He is totally.
Consider him a good friend.
Oh, good. Oh, so you've known you know Gambino?
Yeah. We both, I think we met on Geronimo Draws, like his draw stream, and
oh, cool.
So we did a few shows on there together.
That's
good
awesome.
Guy. Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah, awesome, dude, awesome.
Well, any advice you would give to an aspiring writer?
Don't stop writing. Keep on writing. Don't be afraid to take constructive criticism. You know, if you're afraid of taking that, then you're in the wrong place. Because you know, art is subjective.
That's right.
And you can't win them all. And not everyone's gonna like your story. Just like I understand that not everyone is gonna like Vigilant Fury, or not everyone's gonna like Ghetto Dragon. There's people who prefer certain genres over the other, and that's okay too. And again, you know, if you reach out to somebody and you say, hey, can you check this out and let me know what your thoughts are, and they tell you their thoughts, and some people are harsher than others, as I come to experience, as I, you know, my years trying to make it in this field. If you can't take that, then you either have to learn how to take it and understand that it's nothing personal. It's just they're giving you their honest opinion, and you know, just think of the word constructive. Okay, just focus on that word. Don't focus on criticism. Just focus on the first word before the word criticism, which is constructive. It's to build up. They're helping you. They're trying to help you build up to be better. That's where it comes from, constructive criticism. So if you just accept that, then your life as an artist would be so much easier, you know. And then not only that, but they'll respect you for it. They'll want you around more, because they'll see that, okay, this guy, he's ready, he's hungry, he's willing to grow, he's willing to take the constructive criticism and become a better artist for it. And he didn't take it personal. And therefore, and you want to be around like-minded artists. You want to be around that, because the more you surround yourself with talented, skillful artists, you'll rise with them at the same time. So don't ever reject constructive criticism. That's my advice to any young whippersnapper, you know, who's trying to make it in today's indie comic book scene. So if you're at the 18 in your early 20s, just remember, just keep it in mind that when you ask and reach out to somebody for their constructive criticism, do not take it personal. Unless they personally attack you, then of course that's a different story. But if they're giving you their constructive criticism and telling you need to work on your dialogue, you need to work on your descriptions, you need to work on your character development, or your whatever the case may be, just shut your mouth and listen. Open your ears and listen, and take notes. Take note of it. That's right. And keep that in mind when you're developing your skills as a writer. And the same thing goes for artists as well. And if you do that, then you could go far in this thing. You'll go very far in this field. And that's what you want, right? You want to, I think it's safe to say that most of us who are doing this, we love it. We love making comics. We love producing comics. We love reading comics. But at the same time, we also understand we want to earn a living doing it too. And the best way to earn a living is you got to keep writing. You got to keep learning, and never, ever settle for, you know, like never settle at like, oh, I'm already good, so I don't need to learn anymore. Don't ever settle for that. Always settle for, I will forever be a student, and I'm always still learning new things. That's right. And if you do that, you'll be golden. And awesome. I mean, here I am. Like, I've been trying to make it here for almost 20 years now. And here I am with Vigilant Fury. Yeah. You know, and talking to Mr. Ben Soto, who was nice enough to have me on this show. And I hope this inspires you to keep on going. And that's what we're all about. Indie comics is about empowering yourself, because we're no longer beholden to publishers who will tell you, hey, you know what, maybe you should rethink writing this because you might offend some people. Right. No, screw that. You know, every person here is an adult, and if they don't like something, they could just put it down and move on. And that's what I do. That's what I did. And I'm better off for it, because I get to just surround myself with great artists and people who just love the medium. So that's my advice to you guys, is to never, ever tell yourself that I learned everything I need to know, I'm done. Don't ever do that. That's the biggest mistake you can make. Right. So that's my advice to up and coming young writers.
Yeah. And I'll add to that, like something you said earlier about, not writing your epic like your first time out. Like
exactly, yeah.
Build up to that.
Like, build up to that.
Earn it.
Oh, good. Earn it. That's great. Yeah. Earn it because you want to. It's okay to make mistakes on the way.
Right.
Don't be afraid to make mistakes on the way, especially when you're starting out, because that's how you learn. You learn by your mistakes. And if you, as I like to say, let it burn. If you let that burn a little bit, and not reject it, then eventually the burn will go away. It's kind of like eating a chili pepper, right? It burns, but it's going to go away. You just got to deal with it.
That's right.
So deal with it and then go, you know what? Yeah, like that guy did have a good point. Like I do need to work on my dialogue. I need to work on this or whatever. Then you're going to get better. It's just going to go uphill from there, because now you've not suppressed, but you've kind of let that little burn kind of humble your ego a bit. And if you humble yourself more and more, then you'll be more and more open to more constructive criticism and just grow and get bigger and bigger, into the point where you find success in this. And that's what we all want. We want everyone to be successful in all this. So yeah, that's a great point, Ben, is earn it. You got to earn it.
That's right. Well, Julius, thanks again for showing up and
thanks for having me.
It's a good conversation. Good stuff.
Yeah, of course. We should do more of it. This is fun. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, we'll do it again.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, everybody, thanks for watching. We'll catch y'all next time.
See you guys.